Thank you for the disciplined time. We now have a good 20 minutes for Q&A, and I rather suspect there are more questions of people in the audience. So.
My name is Girish Sajwan. I have a question. Like, we have already consumed 2/3 of the quota of the carbon emission. How is it going to convince the developing countries, especially India and China, when they argue that main cause of the carbon emission are the developed countries? They have already benefited out of the industrialization, and now it's our turn to enjoy and be rich also by and getting the fruits of the industrialization. Is it going to be an easy task to where 2.5 billion people live? And
thank you. In the back row.
I'm Catherine Irons from the University Law School. If we wanted to be a little bit more certain, like greater than 66% chance, and we wanted a slightly better limit, like maybe slightly less than 2 degrees, do you have any numbers on what the carbon budget for, say, like an 80% chance of only 1.5 degrees, limit would be? I know the IPC doesn't have that, the CC doesn't have that report, but I wonder whether there are other ones that you have more information about.
Thank you for the question. Maybe I'll show one slide I probably have here, and that is, no, I thought I had it, sorry. And that is that the IPCC discussed extensively the importance of taking into account equity in the climate negotiations, and it is very clear that a fair distribution of the remaining carbon budget and how to approach that budget is a key element to hope to have an agreement in Paris, because we know, and the IPCC has discussed that many times as well, based on the literature on the dynamics of climate negotiations and international negotiations in general, that an agreement, to have an agreement adopted by consensus, the way the UN work, that agreement needs to be perceived as fair by a clear majority of the participants. So it's a challenge indeed. I mean, you are right to point to the difficulty there, because of course developed countries, as you pointed to, have emitted most of those 1,900 billion tons of CO2 in the past, build their infrastructure, their development on that basis, and understandably developing countries and emerging countries, unless they are shown to have another way to develop that's cleaner and using less carbon, would have a tendency to follow the same path. So it's really a challenge, and it's part of the difficulty in the climate negotiations to see how in a partnership, because there's probably no other way than through real partnerships between North and South, between South and South and North, I mean global partnerships, and also between different sectors and types of actors, to develop a new development mode which would be much less based on carbon as in the past, that would really go towards a decarbonization of the world economy to the benefit of everyone in the future. But it's not an easy task, for sure. And of course, that task would be significantly more difficult, you are absolutely right, if the level of certainty was increased from 66. Actually, the IPCC gives numbers for other certainty level, but they are lower. The IPCC also gives budgets for certainty level of 50%, and if I remember well, 33%. Doesn't answer your question on 80, and it doesn't answer all the questions. It answers some of the questions about the numbers associated to 1.5. You can actually have an idea of what those numbers are by simply looking at that diagram relating the the cumulative emissions to the warming. Instead of looking at 2 degrees, you take the 1.5 line, and if you go to the middle of the clouds, you have the same probability level in both cases, and you can see that the budget decreases significantly. I don't have the exact numbers, and the IPCC indeed doesn't give those numbers, but it's significantly smaller and more difficult in terms of sharing than indeed. Yeah.